And there you have it, National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola, the second witness there to appear before the Madlanga Commission. As we analyze the day that was, we are joined by political analyst Professor Situlego Matebesi, joined also by crime and violence expert Professor Jacob Mofokeng, and legal expert Alton Hart joining us. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Of course, this is also the platform for you, the viewer, to share moments that stood out for you in today's testimony. Send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584 or give us a call 010-594-6010. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Hard, over the past few days to take your eyes off the screen as we see the Madlanga Commission unfold. I think just to start us off, Prof. Matebesi, I'm actually keen to hear just your general view of what we heard today. If there's a sense that the National Police Commissioner today was able to, in some way, concretize some of the allegations that we've heard from the KZN Police Commissioner in July and certainly last week.
I know. Good evening and good evening to the viewers and my fellow panelists. Well, it's yet again, I would say, very interesting times in the political landscape in South Africa. And we just hope that this is yet not another commission which the report thereof will go and gather some dust in an office somewhere, or someone will decide not to release certain portions of this commission's report. But yes, yet again, some of the revelations today is what many civilians are going through, where you've got politicians who are actually putting a lot of pressure on certain individuals to execute certain functions, which sometimes it seems as if it goes against the law. But for me, it's just surprising when that pressure also goes at the highest office within our security clusters. And that, for me, is very worrying, where they also now need to succumb to political pressure.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask about whether or not the National Police Commissioner was making concrete for South Africans, as you say, the allegations by Mkhwanazi, and Elton, I'll come to you for this one, is because for the most part we heard from Mkhwanazi on the 6th of July. There's been analysis and some input in the media, but from an official point of view where there is, a breakdown of what exactly has taken place, it has been Mkhwanazi that has been the loudest. Now that we've heard from Masemola, what do you make of his tone? If there was a sense that he had been adequately forthcoming with information that he shared at the commission today? Was there a sense that there was some preparation and even some dialogue between himself and Mkhwanazi prior to his sitting with the commission, Elton?
Now, if I look at it, surely there must have been dialogue between the National Commissioner and also the Provincial Commissioner Mkhwanazi regarding this matter and actually how to approach this matter. And I think for me, looking and hearing General Masemola testifying, I could pick up there's a sense of he's not giving us the entire scope of what really transpired here, because it's between a rock and a hard place. Because here you've got a minister from the executive side of government telling him to do certain things, and then he sits here in the police service on a operational side having to implement a political policy that was formulated by politicians and given to the public servant to execute now. And also that the disbandment of that unit, on how it happened, because you can't really, that's an operational decision. And then you hear he talks about assessment, but I think the General Masemola was also sort of half trying to cover himself, not to implicate himself in what he shared with the commission.
Yeah, Prof. Mofokeng, do you think that he was able to do that successfully, where he presents his side of things without being able to implicate himself? I mean, it's hard not to think about the moment when he talks about the instruction to disband the political killings task team and that letter being sent while he was on leave, that instruction coming from the Police Minister. Does that to a great extent say the National Police Commissioner's hands are clean, in your view?
Well, already I concur that, he was very careful and in terms of how he articulated the unfolding of what actually General Mkhwanazi has already provided to us. But I'm of the view that I think he was too economical, in terms of sharing that kind of information. Probably, unfairly so, we would have expected what, the bar that General Mkhwanazi has set, which could have been higher. And then we expected that, being the boss coming today and day 4 to be able to give us more clarity as well as more revelations in terms of, this political, task team. But then for him, protecting his career as well as, what, frustrated the commission was his earlier indication that, he could not take, unlawful instructions from the minister. But, on his further submissions, he had to indicate that he had no alternative left but to say that if ever it has to go in a way of disbandment, then he was giving in. So meaning that he had to clarify himself to say that what you submitted earlier and what you are saying now, so that he can be providing with more clarity. So I think he was very careful. And, in terms of what, the previous gentleman indicated that, he did not want to implicate himself, but that could have also provided a bit of confusion to the commission as well as those who expected him to, because of his portfolio, because of responsibility, that we thought that he's a commissioner, then he will have more assertive in terms of the submission that we expected from him.
Prof. Matebesi, your thoughts on just the series of events that the National Police Commissioner laid out for us today, in fact, starting towards the end of 2024, when he says he had the conversation with the Police Minister to say that he believes that Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya may have links to the criminal underworld, for instance, and it wasn't long after that the order came from the Police Minister for the task team to be disbanded. And then subsequently, after coming back from leave, he says, he then had the conversation to say, instead of us it's simply disbanding the political task teams, he sat with Sibiya and said, let's put together a plan for a phased out approach of disbanding the political killings task team. I mean, it's a tightrope that the commissioner was walking today. Are you convinced in, the sort of actions that he says he took? What do you make of those?
Yeah, it's almost like it's very difficult to be able to respond to some of the issues that emerged today. But what is clear for me, it's an understandably so for me, the frustration of the commissioners in terms of getting to what I would say almost like a complete picture of what happened, because as my two fellow panelists have already indicated, it came forth as if the general or the commissioner, national commissioner, was withholding certain information. But we should also remember some of these positions where people are being paraded into because of political affiliation or on the basis of how close you are with politicians. Surely, one way or the other, you will have to scratch their back. And that came out clearly today, to see where you've got somebody who should actually advance the interest of South Africans, but yet he was very careful. And I don't know what further career or ambitions does the National Commissioner have beyond what he has currently achieved. And I think that's perhaps for me where he was not very convincing in terms of taking the commission, the commissioners into confidence, and even South Africans. And I, from my side, it's understandable. You don't want to trample on the foods of those that have actually put yourself into this position. But somebody else, and perhaps the question will be, does this now mean that General Mkhwanazi has nothing to lose? Because he really demonstrated that well, some of those allegations still needs to be tested, but he came forward as being very sincere in his testimony, and that perhaps have endeared himself to South Africans. But what is clear and very confusing, you've got a national commissioner who had doubts about General Sibiya, but yet he entrusted him with this very important task of disbanding this particular task force. And that in itself also begs a lot of questions around this particular issue.
Yeah, perhaps we can talk a little bit in just a moment about what sort of chess moves then were available to the National Police Commissioner when an instruction is coming in to disband. And he, of course, we heard him today talk about that he believed that order from the police minister, he believes, was unlawful. So what were the moves that he had? But let's take some calls, 010-594-6010. Were you watching the Madlanga Commission today? What do you make of what we heard from the National Police Commissioner? David is in Kwaggafontein. David, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, thank you for calling, David. We're listening.
I think it's, so far so good. From us, the South Africans, we wanted to hear what was said by the commission. But I'm not happy. He was not taking the responsibility, and he was not stepping the authority. Like in the question of the disbandment of the PKTT, he was supposed to stamp the authority and say, no, I didn't allow it because it's not his jurisdiction, the minister. It's his jurisdiction as a commissioner. The operation belongs to him. So he was not convincing, because he was saying, I keep on telling him, you can't. Why can't you stream it down or do it little bit by bit? Of which that answer was not good enough, because that was encouraging by the minister to say, let's disband this, because the minister has nothing to do with the disbandment. Because from the first word go, it was not the minister who implemented the PKT. It was the team of ministerial team from the direction of the president. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much for that, David. Richard is in Johannesburg. Richard, good evening.
Good evening once again to you and your panel.
Sure, thanks for calling again. Go ahead, Richard, we're listening.
Look, I must say I was extremely shocked by Masemola's testimony today. And the shocking comes in a negative perspective. Because all along since the July 6th, we've heard from Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that the person who was at the center of disbanding the political killing task team was Shadrack Sibiya. He went on national news and he told us that the head of the syndicate and the person that's dismantling the EKTT, as well as taking the dockets, was Shadrack Sibiya. And today, when Masemola gave his evidence, Commissioner Madlanga actually caught him out. Madlanga cross-questioned him, to which he then conceded. It was an instruction given to him, and he gave the instruction to Sibiya, and Sibiya carried it out. He even went further and still mitigated all the issues that Masemola had raised in the immediate disbanding of the PKTT. But there's one more point I wanted to drive home. The letter issued from the minister spoke about the Morani Commission, meaning Minister Senzo Mchunu is not new to the political killings, particularly in KZN. And he has a reason and a right for him writing that letter, and his discretion counts. However, today was a very poor day for South Africa. Masemola was left lacking. He got caught with his pants down. And let's hope he pulls it up tomorrow. But he definitely misled Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who went out there ranting and raving over allegations that were not true. It's now become clear.
Sure, Richard. A very interesting perspective. Thank you for that. Richard calling in there in Johannesburg. And I wonder, though, if as we look at the events of the beginning of this year, when that letter was issued by the police minister, if it was possible that Masemola, as we heard today, was cornered. I mean, let's not forget that we also heard that there was a concerned party that informed him that the controversial man Vusmuzi Cat Madlanga was very close with Sibiya. And in fact, the source is said to have said, and I'm going to read from it, he said, to such an extent that this person said Madlanga is actually one of my deputies, I'm just not aware. Prof. Mofokeng, is this a national police commissioner that, if, in your view, and if you listen to also what Richard had to say, simply didn't have cards to play?
Yeah, he provided with a bit of, we are not harsh on him, but it's a reality based on what it's at stake. If we can, follow what General Mchunu indicated, that, if the criminal justice system is, infiltrated, then the ecosystem of the criminal justice system will be compromised. But for him then, with that kind of information to hear that, Madlanga is one of the deputies, meaning that, is working with Sibiya, in terms of directing the operations of the South African Police Service. Hence, then this whistleblower, pleaded with the commissioner to say that, what the person is complaining about, that case should never be, under the direction as well as the supervision of General Sibiya. For him then to say that he's not aware of that, it really puts a lot, into question regarding what is his role as well as the information, because General Sibiya is his deputy. So he's supposed to, to measure as well as evaluate the performance of General Sibiya in terms of also the projects that he will provide to General Sibiya to direct, but also, as an operational manager as well as an accounting officer, he's supposed to know what the duties of the deputies are doing as well as the projects, that they are engaging with. For him to then to indicate that, there are certain things that he will not be aware of which General Sibiya was involved with, it really put a lot, to be desired. So it means that like what, Professor Matebesi indicated, that, it puts a particular cloud over his head to say that, what is it that is afraid, to come forward and provide to the community or to the citizens of South Africa in terms of what actually we want to hear. But for him to say there are certain things that he's not aware that actually as a operational manager he's supposed to be knowing, then it is a challenge. And we hope that indeed tomorrow, then he can come and redeem himself in terms of showing that he's competent, he's knowledgeable, he's in charge, as much as he did indicate that he cannot take unlawful instructions from the police minister.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about. It was a long and certainly a busy day at the Madlanga Commission, with the testimony there being given by the National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola. We'll continue to unpack it and get your thoughts on it as well on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We continue to look back on the day that was, as we of course saw the National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola giving his side of the story to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, the very first day of his testimony. He will be back on the stand tomorrow as he continues, but we look at the views of South Africans as to what it is he had to say about what he has in fact called a total encroachment on the SAPS by the police minister, speaking there about the suspended minister Senzo Mchunu. Let's see a few WhatsApps that have come in from our viewers. We bring those up on the screen now. Noah Mutaung and Harry Smith says, evening, Naledi and your panelists. Personally, I feel that Masemola has confirmed the political interference by the Minister Mchunu and Tele, including their relationship with thugs. Okay, Noah, thank you for that. Mdu says, good evening, Naledi. At that level, I expected General Masemola to be decisive and straightforward, taking from General Mkhwanazi. Okay. Interesting, Mdu, thank you. Amoleletsane said, good evening. Sibiya and Mchunu have a lot to answer. All the fingers point to them. I want to see what their response to the allegations would be. Our country has been given to the dogs, as the English adage says. There's no smoke without fire. Moleletsane Masemola with that one. We did also hear another name that we prominently spoke about in June this year. Alton, perhaps you can help us with this. We also heard the commission being told that there is an expectation that Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo would take the stand at the Madlanga Commission. And you've got to think about that a little bit, because there's a sense here that he would have a lot to add in terms of the holes that we'd want to see plugged. National Police Commissioner Mchunu, of course, alluding to what he believes was a smear campaign against Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, who was arrested in June on fraud and corruption charges. Now, I mean, that's an interesting figure, but also what it says around just how divided the police force actually is, and if that's going to be a big theme in this commission. Alton.
No, indeed. If one looks at it and the position that he held in KwaZulu-Natal, where most of the killings stems from the political killings, he has some role to play. And obviously, it would be important for him to come and also tell from his perspective as to what really happened to the PKTT. In that regard, to say who told him that this unit will be disbanded and where does it emanate from? Because one needs to now know here you have got national policing policy that is made by the executive. You have that steering committee that is directly reporting sort of half to the president, who's the head of the executive. And now you have a police commissioner, the national one, who's appointed by the president. So already in that realm, there's a lot of political contact with the operational side of policing. And as much as we want to say that the police force should stay independent, you cannot deny that this political context with the operational side is there. And clearly you would find that people from a policy perspective try to interfere in the operational perspective. And the PKTT team that was put together should have been an operational thing to say, this is how we're going to manage and implement the policy to make sure that we provide security services in the country. And I think whatever happened with the allegations against the provincial commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal, that is something that we also need the commission to actually use it as a fact-finding mission to see really what transpired in this whole chain of events and how it helped. But I think for me, General Masemola, the damage has been done. And I heard Prof. Mufokeng say maybe he will come tomorrow and pull up his pants. I think already his pants is torn. So there's holes in that pants now. And I'm worried tomorrow he might contradict himself if he comes now and deviate a lot from what he said today, because that will then open up a can of worms to say, listen, yesterday you said this, today you are saying this. Can we really trust what you're saying, and can we take into confidence what you are saying, and are you really open and honest and frank with us as to what really transpired? But I know from where the National Commissioner said he was between a rock and a hard place. Here you've got a minister telling you to do certain things. Here you've got pushback from your generals on operational level to say, listen, this thing is achieving success and we're not going to stop just because a politician who doesn't really know operations tells us we must stop this.
Yeah, Prof. Matebesi, do you want to take a stab at this one as well? The issue of Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo having given thorough updates on what is happening with the requests of the disbandment, but more than anything, thorough updates on the relationship between Madlanga as well as Sibiya. We heard today that the commission is going to look to have him come on and give evidence in camera, however, but the contributions that you think that he could put on the table?
Yes, no, I strongly think it will also be very scathing, but what we should also understand and appreciate as South Africans, we know that our politicians, our public figures, even from the security cluster, criminal justice system, do have relationship with ordinary South Africans, their neighbors and all that. But what borders here, and we speak about a disbandment of a unit, but one thing that we should realize that this for me is actually, if proven true, it's high treason at another level, because here we're talking about people, even if they are not found guilty, one way or the other, has something to do with a disbandment of a unit that wanted to find at least investigate political murders that one way or the other has to do with our democracy, has to do with our body politics. And yet someone somewhere have decided against that. So perhaps yet once again, light may be shed on the way forward in terms of finding solutions because there are many South Africans and families who want answers, who have lost their loved ones in this battle. And that's one thing that we should not forget about that. And that for me is worrying, because this simply means that there are motives to control our state through all the various means, but that is even more worrying when the police are also involved.
Yeah, Prof. Mofokeng, your thoughts on the request by the inquiry that we also see, or rather the information from the inquiry that we might also see Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, who of course was crime intelligence head, giving testimony, that going to be in camera, what you expect from that, and then. Just as I stack thoughts for you a little bit, top of mind, you think, for Police Minister Senzo Mchunu this evening after a day like that?
Well, yes, he's brought to, though probably his testimony will be in camera. But one thing that is interesting, observing the testimony or the submission by General Mkhwanazi, at the backdrop of what has been there in the media in terms of, General Khumalo. It's about, how then he elevated, General Khumalo in terms of the sterling work that he did on the task team, as well as, his hands-on approach, but as well as what General Masemola also alluded to, that fact that, Khumalo is the person that will be able to provide more clarity in terms of, the operations of the task team. But we need to be aware that what the minister did was maybe at the backdrop of the submissions, various submissions, either from certain sectors of the community or the public, where they might have issues against the task team in terms of how then they handle certain investigations and how, certain individuals were subjected to torture. So whenever he will come, then, probably we expect him to come towards the end of the hearing. I'm talking about the minister. He will be able to provide with that kind of information, because I think the odds are against him, so that he can be able to do that. But then, as a minister, probably, one will have really, secured a very strong team of lawyers, so that they can be able to analyze what is happening, so that, whenever that day comes, one will be able to, justify the actions, as well as what consultative, steps he did, overstepping Masemola as well as Mkhwanazi.
I'm going to move towards closing it off. Elton, what do you want to hear covered tomorrow as we see the National Police Commissioner take the stand once again? And perhaps who else you think can be called, any names that you think really jump up for you at the moment?
No, for me, I think the National Commissioner, he must just take South Africans into his confidence and say, South Africa first, listen, yeah, I need to tell the nation, listen, the minister gave me this instruction, I resisted. And if he didn't resist, then he must also tell us, listen, yeah, I did not resist because I fear out of reprisal maybe that I might get replaced or fired. He must just be bold and honest enough, because as Prof. Matabisi has said, this is lives of people that we are talking about here. It's not just numbers and maybe springs because that they sold at inflated prices. People lost breadwinners in the end. There's a point in time where we as South Africans need people to take responsibility for their action and to say, this is my part in the wrongdoing that happened, and grow up and stop thinking about securing our jobs and saving our jobs. And as harsh as it might sound, that is what I want to hear from a national commissioner, that I can actually say I respect a man that can stand there and say, irrespective of what's going to happen to me, I'm going to put my country first and make sure that I tell my country what really transpired here without jeopardizing our intelligence services or our secret services in the country.
Yeah.
To tell the commission to say, listen, yeah, this is what's happening. Obviously, there's a lot of these other deputies and provincial commissioners from Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal specifically. There's a couple of them that I would also want to see because they were involved in this joint venture in the PKTT that also can come and tell what really happened, how the team was composed, and what was the word on the street, why they are being sort of disbanded.
Yeah, especially when you hear that the Eastern Cape, for instance, the political killings task team having great achievements in that province. Prof. Matebesi, you get the final word here, what you want to hear tomorrow, what he simply cannot miss when he takes the stand tomorrow.
Yes, I mean, as what we would say is the leader of the police service, we really want to see Commissioner Masemola, the National Commissioner, demonstrating to each and every member in the South African Police Service that they can trust him and that South Africans can trust him with this huge task of that he has been entrusted in saving the lives of South Africans. And we would like to see that coming out. And hopefully tomorrow he will come out guns blazing in terms of his testimony. But we do understand that he finds himself under tremendous pressure. Anyone else would have been under tremendous pressure. But yeah, for once, I think it's a glorious opportunity to put South Africa first and not look at personal interests and those that are close to him.
Yeah, that's repeated over and over again. So important. Put South Africa first. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure. Professor Sithulego Matebesi, political analyst, speaking to us there. Professor Jacob Mofokeng, who is a crime and violence expert, as well as Mr. Elton Hart, who is our legal expert, chatting to us.